Hey everyone, welcome to the Self-Awareness Journey podcast. I'm Melissa Albers.
And I'm JJ Parker. This podcast is for seekers of happiness, joy, and a centered approach to success in life. Seekers of their true, authentic selves.
Get ready for some real talk on everything from anxiety, emotions, and habits to love, compassion, and forgiveness. We know you'll be challenged and enlightened by this conversation, and we're so glad you're here. Let's dive in.
Well, I just got done with my 8 weeks of coaching the boys' tennis team at the high school team.
This is the one that you were ultra fired up about, thought it would be no big deal at all.
Yes.
How was it?
At the beginning of the season, it was great.
That's good.
It was great.
Yes. No pun intended.
Oh, yeah, that's funny. I didn't even intend that. Right, at the beginning of our season, for our school, the boys and the girls seasons are split. I've spent a lot of time with the girls, coaching the girls team.
Right,
this is the first time that I was like the solo coach of the boys team.
Yeah.
And they go in the spring here. So when we started, it was cold and wet and
that's
windy,
right. I remember that.
And I was like, this is torture out here on the tennis court.
Every day. We're doing this Monday through Friday and then some Saturdays.
Yep. But as the season progressed, it got nicer and nicer. And the end of it was amazing. But what was really fun about it was it really started making me reflect on like, what is coaching? Because I've volunteered and kind of helped out with coaching, but again, I've never really been the head coach.
Yeah.
So, and I didn't have any helpers either, which was a little different. So it was just kind of like me.
Yeah.
And the group.
A million people. Yeah.
It wasn't a million. We don't have very many boys come out for tennis. So I had a team of 10, which is the minimum number of tennis players you need to put up a match against another school.
Wow. I never knew that.
I needed all my players to show up every
single
time.
Day. You must have brought snacks.
But it was fun. But again, this is where I was like really starting to like think about what more specifically is the role of a coach.
Yes, such a good question.
And you, as a coach, I thought that'd be a good conversation to have.
Yeah. I think coaching is a wonderful, wonderful experience, whether you're on the giving end of that or the receiving end of that. And I think that there's a myriad of times in our lives where we benefit from a coach, and I think it starts really young, even as early as 3 or 4 years old when you're in a sport, if you're getting your kids into t-ball, that's the first experience they may have with a sport and with having a coach, someone outside of their parent that's encouraging them.
Yeah. What's interesting is I think a lot of us have had, what would you call that? Coachee experience, like being a player and being coached.
Yes.
As young people, right?
Yeah.
Middle school, like again,
teachers.
Those school years, we probably had plenty of interactions with coaches. As adults, how many times are we in a coachee relationship? Probably not very often.
Right. And I think that as your age number increases, the number of times that you will naturally be set up with a coach or experiences that coaching would benefit you lessens. So when you're young, you have a lot more exposure, a lot more experiences, a lot more different people, kind of pouring into you. And at least that's the general, right? And then as you get older, there are less and less times where that's a thing, unless you begin to seek it out. So it does require more proactivity, I think, even as an adult to have coach. And I think there's a number of places that that we should talk about what coaching means. It isn't just physical, obviously. It's not just a sport,
Yeah, that's the easiest one to jump to, but I agree. Yeah. So like my first question to you is like what is a coach? Like, how would you define a coach? Because like, to me, it's like, sometimes we mix these things up a bit. Like we've talked about mentors.
Yeah.
Right. I talk about therapists. Like to me, like those are a little different. So like, how would you define what a coach is?
That's such a good question. I've never been asked that before. I think coaching is a number of things. I think the number one thing that it is an encourager. I think, we always think about, coaching to improve upon something. And so you're thinking about somebody giving critical feedback, which I think it does include those things as well. But I think the number one thing that a good coach is an encourager. We all need to be encouraged.
I like that.
The other thing I think that what embodies a coaching relationship or being a good coach would be the ability to offer guidance, the ability to influence a person's state of thinking, being a good thinking partner. I often call myself a thinking partner. And sometimes I'll give advice. Sometimes I'll offer suggestions. Most of the time, though, I'll try to say my job is to give you objectivity to a scenario that you yourself can't have in it. And then perhaps offer a countering idea to think about. So somebody that will come at something from a different angle because there's no dog in the hunt, as I always say. So I think it's a number of things.
Yeah.
It's a good partnership.
Yeah. I would also say, like, for me, like a good coach, it's like, you kind of hit on it, but it's like, it's hard to, like, in one way, it's hard to, like, see myself.
Yeah,
it's like
totally.
The coach can be like a mirror.
Yeah.
Or, like, be able to, like, help see myself easier because, like, they're observing.
Yeah.
And I think, like, we had an episode where we talked to one of our director friends, and they said that, like, the role of a movie director is to be a mirror for the actors.
Yeah,
I always thought that was
so
like
cool.
a really interesting insight about the role of a director. And it's kind of like the role of a coach is to be a mirror.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really true. And, there does need to be, I truly believe that a coach's ability to be effective with the person, it has much to do with their level of trust. And being in communion together, like if people don't know me when they first start coaching, there's always an enthusiasm with people when they start to coach because they're excited to get after something that they maybe have been putting off or something that's coming up that they need help with. So there's this enthusiasm, yet there's also a little bit of, like, I would say almost not trepidation, that's too strong of a word, but like a little fearful, like, what is this person going to be like? Is this person going to judge me? Is this person going to think I'm broken? Does this person think I'm bad at something? Are they judging my decisions that I'm making? And so it takes a while to build that rapport so that there's safety, there's psychological safety and trust within that relationship as well. So there's just a number of things that have to happen.
What, you just started talking about it, but, like, let's go back to, like, when do you think a person should actually get a coach?
Such a good idea. I was looking forward to getting to this part.
I was reflecting on that myself because, like, I have a couple of coaches.
Yeah. Right.
Like,
yeah.
When did
same.
I decide that I needed or when did I seek those out?
Yeah. So I think there are a couple of key times that you can sort of capture when are typical times that a coach is appropriate. And I think that they're based on a couple of things. I think if you are involved in a project that needs a leg up from where you are, and that project it could be passing an ACT or an SAT score for college entrance. Then there's a lot of coaches that will help prepare for that. So that would be like a project-based thing, or if you're trying to complete a certification or something like that requires a specificity of someone who's an expert. Then, like, that's a great time. And it might be an organization actually, like, trying to get, Kaizen certified or to get certified in some kind of thing as a whole company. There's a number of
if you're trying to beat your tennis arch enemy in a match and you can't do it over and over, you might get yourself a tennis coach to learn some new skills.
To me, that's skill-based. So to me, that's different than project-based. So I think you've got project-based, and then I think you have skill-based, which is what you're talking about. I still have never laughed harder that your competitor that you could not get around, no matter what, in tennis was named court. I'll never get over that. It's so funny. But anyway, yeah, so then obviously skills-based. So that would be a lot where, obviously I'm an executive coach, so I do leadership skills. I do company-wide organization skills. You know, those would be my expertise. So people that are trying to get better that way or amplify their own skill set somehow. It might be mental, it might be emotional. You might go to a counselor or a therapist because you want to get better at something emotionally. To me, that's coaching, you know. And then physical, like, yeah, you take tennis lessons. I actually am just wrapping. Well, I'm not quite wrapping up, but close to wrapping up. I've been in now for 2.5 months, a fly fishing casting coach.
Okay. Oh, I didn't know you were doing that. That's awesome.
You did it?
No.
I didn't tell you that?
No.
Okay, I got to tell you this story because this is super funny. His name's Brian, and he has a virtual casting coaching company, and or practice. He is the best coach I have had in a long time. If anybody's interested, his name's Brian Rosa, and he's out of Maine. Anyway, he's the
because fly fishing's like a
universal
thing that people do.
Shut up.
Like the most niche thing ever.
I have to tell you, this is so funny though, because I've been fishing. Well, I've fished my whole life, but I've been into fly fishing specifically for probably 8 years now or 9 years, something like that. Anyway, I've never, ever, ever been able to have a long cast. So the reason you would want a long cast is if you want to do like saltwater fishing, because you got to really shoot the line so you can get it out 100 yards, you know. And fly fishing, you're not throwing a big lure. You're using the weight of the fishing line to push it out, to send it. And for me, all these years, I could do about 20 yards. That's it. And I would get so mad. I was so mad because I really wanted to get out further. So my very first lesson with Brian, he said, "Okay, well, go ahead and take 30 yards out on your line, and we'll start casting with that." And I was like, "What?" He said, "Yeah, 30." And I was like, "No. That's why I'm in coaching,
I want to get to that point."
And he said, "You're already able to, so just do it." Okay, that's what he said. I was like, "Oh, that's it. I'm not doing this. I don't like this guy anymore. I don't care how much he impressed me at the beginning." But anyway, fast forward, like I was casting 30, 40 yards in a week and a half.
Wow.
And so now we're practicing like how to get to that 100 yards, 120 yards. But the stuff that I've learned that I already was resourced to do, but I just didn't understand. And there was something in the timing or in the way I was doing something that wasn't quite right. It was very nuanced. Fly fishing it's not super easy. I'm not trying to be discouraging, but it is not the easiest thing to get good at, and you need places where you can practice, and it's hard to practice shooting 100 yards of the line when you're in a little stream filled with trees.
Yeah. I'm just imagining, like, I don't know, like you and you're in your yard with your fishing stuff and your laptops like precariously balanced on a stump, and like your neighbors are like, "What is this lady doing?"
No, I'll tell you what. Do you know what I have? I have a tripod in my phone. The first lesson was how I can learn how to take video of myself casting. So I will send him multiple videos on my phone a week. He watches them. He texts me back, "Do this, do that. Your arm's coming back too far. Your elbows moving around too much, blah, 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 blah." And then perfect. So it's like real-time feedback. And I am 100% out in my backyard. Absolutely in my backyard with the tripod and my phone. So there you go. But like, that's an example of a skill base that I kept practicing, and I thought I could get it by myself. 7 or 8 years come down, and I'm getting more and more frustrated because I don't have many opportunities to be in those places where I can shoot line like that. But when I only have a few of those times, I want to be good at it. Yeah. So getting a coach was the best way.
What you explained was a perfect example of him being able to observe things you can't, right?
Yes, exactly.
And since he's an expert, he knows the very subtle differences of where your elbow is or
totally,
all those little details.
Yeah.
That's great.
And then now he's teasing me. So before he was rather formal because he didn't know me. Now it's been over a couple months, and so now he's teasing me. He's like, "Melissa, every video you send, you've got your hand on your hip." So one hand's casting and the other hand I've got on my hip. And I was like, well, hey, I never knew I was doing it. But I realized I do it on purpose because it prevents me from shifting my body around. It just reminds me to stay in place. but I didn't realize that's how I was doing it. So then I thought, that must look ridiculous. It's like little Ellie Mae's out there with her hand on her hip. Anyway, yeah, so I think, skill-based, I think that's a really, really big, it's a really, really big opportunity, when you want to get better at something. But here's another opportunity for coaching that it just hit me this week. I had a leader call me that I've worked with for years. He is a top of his game leader. He is loved and respected in his industry. People clamor to work for him and work where he works. And he reached out to me and he said, I think I need some coaching on something because I have all these high performers, but I think I'm doing something to make them too competitive with each other. And what I loved about the way he entered into the conversation was with humility. He had such humility, but he is at the top of his game. So he felt like he should understand all of it without having a coach. He's like, I should be able to figure this out. He was kind of almost being hard on himself. And I was like, top performers get coaches all the time.
Yeah, that's what I always think is really interesting is like there is maybe a certain, I don't know, mindset around sometimes like you wouldn't need a coach, or if you've gotten to some level of expertise, you don't need one anymore.
Right.
But all the top athletes have coaches their whole entire careers.
Absolutely.
Michael Jordan has had a coach his entire career.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. And again, it isn't even just the physical part. It's more the mental part. Like you talk about and Olympians, they talk about how their coaches work with them mentally, how they're having them run through the activity that they do over and over mentally. And they've run tests on people doing that the brain is showing the exact same light up colors and movement, whether they're just imagining that they're doing it or where they're actually doing it. I find that fascinating.
There's a couple things about a coach that I think is interesting. Sometimes we look for a coach who might have kind of like you have greater skill at a thing than you do because you want to learn the skill. But I don't know that that's always the case. I think there's a lot of really great coaches that aren't better at the skill than you are, but are able to get you to perform better.
Yes, I totally agree with that. I would say that the majority of the people that I coach are 100 times better than I am in a million things, or maybe everything. I don't know. But because I can be with them and ask them questions to amplify their own skill for themselves, that's what I can do for them. So I'm not going to be an expert in, if you think about leadership, there's a million different industries that people are in, and they're all solving unique problems. Some of them are people problems, which are not unique, but you talk about stuff that's happening in their industry or stuff that's happening politically or things like that. There's no way everybody's going to know that, but having a mindset and a relationship is really what can help.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really true.
When is we just kind of talked about good reasons to get a coach, or when is it appropriate to get a coach? When have you seen where it's really not a good idea to get a coach, or have you seen people who maybe aren't in the right space for a coach?
Yes, definitely. Actually, I've seen it in my professional life and in my personal life. I think and maybe there are fewer, at least with the folks that I deal with, but there are a number of folks that are ego-driven in their actor selves, as we like to say. And a lot of times people like to do things because of what it looks like on the outside. So by saying you have a coach makes you look cool.
I see, yeah. But you're not kind of open to it.
Right.
Or
yeah.
We talk about people being coachable or not coachable. And you'll find some people that are not coachable.
Exactly. And they want to argue.
Yeah.
I've had that in the past, and sometimes that happens. The other opportunity that I see that sometimes causes a little bit of a ruckus is if you are wanting to say you have a coach that you are giving yourself the false narrative that you're fixing something or that you're working on something, but you're really not, exactly like you just said, you're really not open to it. You don't really want to. You like the way you are. You like the way you are, even if it's not healthy, you know, even if it's not helpful for you in your career or in your personal life. So you feel like, oh, I should probably, you know, somebody told me I should do this, or I'm going to do this and show everybody that I can.
Yeah.
But they don't have the open mindset of adjustment or change or growth. And if you don't have a growth mindset, then it is extremely difficult to change a single thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So how do you know coaching's working?
That's a good question. Well, let me ask you, because you just finished 8 weeks, and then I'll answer. How do you know coaching's working?
I don't know. They're all still terrible at tennis.
That's awful.
But
Take that back.
We had a good time. My goal for the tennis team was to make sure that all the kids liked tennis at the end of our tennis season.
That's a good goal. Did you hit that goal?
I think so.
Yeah,
I think so.
That's not a bad
Halfway
goal
through
for
the season,
kids.
I had one kid lose a match, and he walked off the court and he goes, I hate this game. I don't want to play anymore. And I was like, dude, no, come on.
I hate to say it. I think that was me when I was in junior high. That sounds like something I would have done. I'm never coming back again. I hate everyone.
The next match, I had to remind him, I'm like, just remember, you're good at tennis and you like tennis. Get in there.
Get in there. So did he improve?
He did great.
Did he? See?
Yeah. Again, it's like you said, it's like a lot of the role of being a coach is being the encourager.
Yeah. Yes.
So sometimes that's all it takes. But
I think
in my observation, you'll see like if it's the skill-based thing like tennis, like yes, everyone should like improve in their skill. They should learn some stuff. But like the emotional part, like you were saying, is like that's where I wanted to see them grow and
I bet you did, though.
And tennis is an emotional game. Like when you're out there alone on the court getting your butt kicked, it's hard.
I know.
And then everything
I told
gets
you
worse
that
and
I told you I lost my temper once and threw my tennis racket across the entire court over the net. That was when I was young, very young. But you asked an interesting question. You said, "How will you know when a person's getting better?"
It's working. It's
working.
Yeah.
Yeah. I try to stay very objective and guide the person into recognizing that they have increased their skill set in whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you what, it is very emotional for me when I see people that come to me sort of broken somewhere, you know, like emotionally broken somewhere or easily triggered by something. And it's affecting how they lead or it's affecting how they're in partnership with people at work. And to work on something to a place where they begin to have more self-awareness, because that's the key. This is why I'm so, because when somebody has self-awareness, then they can actually become more conscious of when something's happening that's making them upset. And so working on that piece and then watching them go from this used to upset me and I can't have this conversation and I get so mad, and they would come to my coaching sessions just loaded for bear. This happened and this happened and this happened, and just really wound up, to coming to my coaching sessions with the exact same scenarios, very little energy or emotional heat, and more objective. And, having that feeling more resourced and able. So that's a big one. It's just people feeling better and being able to respond to scenarios in a more gentle and kind, easy way, even if it's with themselves. It's just amazing. It's amazing to see that kind of growth, and you can really, really, really feel it. And so obviously the person can really, really, really feel it. And then I think that's when they know, like, okay, this is working. Then there's this little interesting thing that happens with some people is after they get over this first hump and they start feeling a lot better, then something happens where they fall back a little bit. I mean, this happens 98% of the time. And I always liken it to climbing a staircase. You'll climb a staircase and you hit a plateau. So you get better at something and you're sitting at this plateau. You can see better. You're up higher. Everything feels easier. And then something occurs and you fall down a couple of steps and you go back to something that you used to do minimally. And people then at that point right there panic and they think, oh, I haven't learned anything, I can't do this, and they completely lose confidence. It's an exaggerated loss of confidence. I see it. It's just this one stage. It's really interesting to see that. And then after that, though, it's like, no, everybody does that. It's like, 2 steps forward, 1 step back is not failing. It's the cha-cha.
Yeah.
You go down a couple of steps and that's okay. You now recognize, that's what I used to do.
That's just like how everything is in life.
Yes, exactly. But then once they get back up on that, to that plateau, then they climb and they're a lot. And then the last thing that I will say is, as someone's kind of nearing that point where they've really mastered something and they maybe don't need a coach anymore. They're ready to launch.
That was the next thing I was going to ask you, like the duration of coaching engagements, right?
Yeah. Sometimes
they're short, sometimes they're long. Like what is your opinion around the length of these?
I always plan in a minimum of 6 months. Because again, like all that, getting to get safety and be able to understand a scenario, and that takes time. And I say at least 6 months. At the end of that, some people are done. Some people are ready to move on and they're great. I don't have that. And for me, I have no ego about how long someone's in coaching. To me, that's not an indicator of success. It's not an indicator of their need of me. I don't want people to be attached to me at all. It's not about me. So I would say anything from 6 months to a year is often common. But I have a lot of people that just like to stay in coaching to keep working on their skills and just check in and make sure they're doing all their stuff. So it really depends situationally and on the person. But I say it's a minimum of 6 months.
I would say, like, professionally, my professional coach, early on, it was a lot of skill stuff. It's a lot, it's a lot of that kind of stuff. Nowadays, it's a lot of accountability. It's like simply like, did you do the thing you told me you were going to do last month? No. I didn't do it.
Okay, see you next month. Is it still
important? Yes.
Okay, see you next month.
Exactly.
The other thing I would say too is this is an interesting piece too. If you are actively engaged in something that you are trying to get better at with a coach, there needs to be consistency in meetings and a cadence that is appropriate. Most coaching is every other week. And a lot of executives will be like, what? Like every 2 weeks? Like that's kind of... But then once they're in it, it's like 2 weeks flies by and they have an hour load of stuff just to talk about before they can get to any questions that they might have. So, but I say that's another, if you're really actively pursuing improving something of yourself, I really think that cadence and consistency is really critical.
Just like everything, right? Consistency is the key. Yeah.
Now, people will sometimes say, well, I want to just do once a month. Well, that's not actually coaching, in my opinion. That's just more like, that is an accountability partner. That's a buddy to check in and stuff like that. But it's not as much of an active increase your skill set on something. Yeah.
Well, cool. It seems like we could talk about coaching forever.
Well, I know I could. I think it's a great thing. And I think everybody should experience being as an adult. I think people should 100% try to be in some kind of coaching experience as an adult. It's I agree. It feels so good to work on something in yourself that way.
Did you enjoy this episode? Please go to your favorite podcast platform to subscribe, rate, and leave a review so others can discover it as well. Growing self-awareness is a lifelong journey, and it's better when we're all in it together. Please think of someone you know who could benefit from hearing today's conversation and share this episode with them.
We can't thank you enough for listening. Until next time, happy exploring.